Welcome. I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda.
and this is episode 32 of Books and Bingos. This week, we're recommending books with Native and Indigenous representation. So, Amanda, not a lot of Native and Indigenous books published, but I think the quality that we do get is amazing. I feel like I've never read one that's been like, meh. I feel like every single one, I'm like, this book is amazing. Everybody should read it.
Yeah, I actually totally agree with that. I wish there were more. I was actually looking at my November like TBR, the books that I really try to read, and I want to do some nonfiction for Nonfiction November, and then I want to do some native. It was a struggle. There's a lot of nonfiction out there, but not a whole lot of fiction in the genres that I like to read in. So there's not a whole lot of romance. There's not a whole lot of mystery thriller. There's a few for YA, but not a lot for adults either. So still have some
Yeah.
work to do and
I
publish.
feel like the big genre with this category is horror, which I mean, I
Yeah.
guess I kind of get, but it also surprised me a little.
Yeah. I think Stephen Graham Jones is like leading the charge on that genre for sure. Um,
Absolutely.
and then a lot of middle grade too, but more about celebrating their culture and sharing aspects of lots of things that happen within Indigenous communities. So I feel like that's great to teach kids about. But yeah, just like normalizing
Mhm.
that culture and just setting stories in various homes and Indigenous areas of the nation. Not a whole lot of books about that. Just like in that just that in that arena, like making it more popular, making it more available for people to read about instead of it being a niche market. I think we still have some work to do there.
And I feel like it's definitely improved like over like the last like 10, 15 years, but yeah,
Absolutely.
we got a long way to go. Like you said, it's still kind of hard to find some titles when you're looking for recommendations. So we've got four that you can read this November to celebrate Native and Indigenous History Month. So Amanda, take us away with your first pick.
So I did manage to find a adult romance. It actually recently released. This one is called The Truth According to Ember by Danica Nava. It is a workplace adult romance debut by Own Voices author, which I love because we can really see the accuracy of the characters, their background, their like all their customs reflected on the pages. So this book follows Ember, who has a little problem with telling the truth all the time, but it's always for a good reason. When she can't get a job in accounting because her brother spends the money she was going to use to finish her degree, she decides some little white lies won't hurt. So on her resume, she kind of forges lies about her education and work background as well as her race because she was putting on applications Native American and Indigenous and wasn't finding to get any callbacks from people. And when she lists herself as white, Caucasian, um, it allows Ember to land her dream job as an accounting assistant, where she is quickly promoted to the CEO's temporary assistant. At the same time, she meets Danawa, who is the company's IT guy. And even though there's a no dating coworker policy, yeah, that goes right out the window on their first little like work trip that they have to both go to. And so obviously Ember's lies are going to catch up with her. It's going to affect her family. It's going to affect her relationship with Dan. It's going to just build and build, but like she has to kind of learn when she needs to be truthful. And so I found that to be a good lesson for a lot of us. This was just a very sweet romance book about a BIPOC woman who struggles to ask for help. And she's learning to lean on those around her and accept her flaws. There's a little bit of spice in the second act, but for the most part, it was about Ember's struggles with finding the job, you know, keeping the job, her family, and trusting someone new into her life. The content warnings would be classism, racism, blackmail, racial slurs, cultural appropriation, imprisonment, abandonment, death of parents, and that's off page. The bingo squares would be Native or Indigenous Rep, 2024 release, and romance.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to give you one of those adult mystery thrillers that you
Yes.
asked for. And this was also a debut novel. It's called Winter Counting by David Heska Wanbli Weiden. And this features Virgil. He's the guy on the reservation that you hire to serve up some justice. They go into some detail about why that would be necessary on a reservation due to the policing, etc., on the reservation. But he's happy to step in and beat some people down when they need it. So he's the guy you call, and he ends up getting involved with the recent heroin crisis at the reservation when it hits a little too close to home with his nephew. So he ends up teaming up with his ex-girlfriend, who is a lot of fun, and they go all over the area to try to track down where it's coming from, who's behind this, and really put a stop to it, to help not only the nephew but the reservation as a whole. And I will say I really loved reading about Virgil. I mean this in the nicest way, but at the beginning, this book was kind of slow, and I did not really care for him because he just seemed like kind of like a thug who was just really lost and like kind of sad. And it just, I don't know, it was hard to read his character, but I think that was so important then for his character arc, because I think as you get to know him more and you see more about his life and just all the details, you really, really love him. I would 100% read any other book featuring Virgil, Wounded Horse, but I don't think there's another one yet, but I'm hoping maybe that could happen. I really like reading the stories that are really about more authentic life on a reservation. I think we are very much fed a narrative that is very racist, and it's nice to see a real life perspective and to see connections that aren't made for people who don't live on a reservation about why life is the way it is currently. So I think it's just a really nice view behind the window versus the picture we're kind of given by the mainstream. So I absolutely love that take on this. I love this whole story. I thought it was very thrilling. It does involve drug use, though, and drug abuse, obviously, with the heroin, violence, gun violence, and racism. I believe there is some death and possibly a sexual abuse linked in here, but I think that's a very minor part of it. And this will work for thriller, Native Indigenous rep, and a mystery.
That sounds great. I wish it would turn into a series for you. That sounds like something that could potentially, you can have a constant, every book has a different mystery behind it or thriller part, but Virgil stays the same.
Yes, I would love that. And the ex-girlfriend, she's got to be there too.
All right, great. My second pick is On a Wing and a Tear by Cynthia Leitich Smith. If you're familiar, if you've been reading any Native and Indigenous books in middle grade, you probably know who she is. She is a fantastic author that's been around for a while. This is a new middle grade adventure slash magical realism book. I loved her Harvest House one that came out not too long ago. That was actually a YA book. And so I love that she's back to her usual middle grade because I love them both. This one follows Mel and Ray, who are kids from different indigenous nations, but they've become like siblings because Mel and her mom moved in with Ray and his grandpa after they fell on some hard luck and her dad left them. So now, when great grandfather Bat, like legit a bat, and he is an esteemed elder in the winged creature community, ends up with an injury, he seeks refuge in their old oak tree at their house. And Bat can talk, so that's where our magical realism comes into play. And he needs help getting to Macon, Georgia. So he asks the kids for assistance because he has an injury and he can't get there by himself. He is going with his little squirrel friend to play the great ball game rematch. And so it's just like this like animal Olympics kind of thing. And Grandpa Charlie Half Moon, who is Ray's grandpa, he volunteers to take them, and it happens to coincide with spring break. But along the way, there's lots of like danger to the animals, danger to the people, a lot of outsiders that get in the way and make it kind of like an adventurous trip and a little bit of a tough one to get where they need to go. So this was a middle grade modern folklore adventure story that brings in so much indigenous culture. There was some mystery involved, like I said, some danger. There was a lot of history, which I felt to be fun because it was a fun way to learn it rather than just them regurgitating facts and kids getting bored. It was a lot of fun for that. You might want to pay attention to some Easter eggs. If you have read Smith's other books, there are little hints and different characters from other books that she's written that pop up throughout this story. So this one is great for upper elementary, lower middle school readers. And the glossary at the back is chef's kiss. Like I feel like so many times when kids are reading about a culture unlike their own, they don't know how to pronounce certain things. They don't know what certain words even mean when they're referenced in the story. So I really appreciated Smith's including that in the back because a lot of kids do want to learn a little bit more. And so it kind of lets them have that opportunity to do that. The content warning would be parental abandonment, death of a spouse. It's just mentioned. And then parental death. The bingo squares would be Native or Indigenous Rep and a 2024 release.
Wonderful. My next one has a little bit of like magical realism, spiritualism involved as well. It's called The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. This is an adult realistic with some magical realism, spiritualism mixed in. We follow Tuki, our main character, who, while she read a lot while she was incarcerated, now that she's out, she's found herself working at a bookstore as we approach the COVID era. But before the world shuts down, she discovers that the shop's most annoying customer is continuing to visit the store even after her recent death. So while this presents as kind of a funny mystery ghost story, it gives you a lot of time to think about the concepts of isolation and grief and just reflection overall for Tuki and for the reader. And essentially, this is more of a slice of life story, kind of slow burning, thought provoking. This is not going to be action packed, but it still truly gets to the idea of being a human, I think. And one of the tidbits that I loved about this is that the author actually wrote herself into this book. Louise Erdrich actually owns a bookstore, and she herself is the bookstore owner in the book, which I just love. It was so fun. That I love that about this book. But overall, I think this is fantastic, especially for anybody who did live through the COVID crisis. And I think anybody who just comes on hard times and reflects and grows as a person and is kind of maybe lost trying to find themselves. So great pick for this one. I think our content warnings are going to be police brutality, racism, culture appropriation, death, medical content, drugs, drug abuse, and colonization. For the bingo board, this is going to be Native and Indigenous Rep or a mystery.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I love the author writing herself in. That's so meta.
Yes, when I heard that, I'm like, I've got to read this. Like a ghost story set, a bookstore with the author as a character. Yes, I'm in.
Yeah, that's definitely right up your alley.
And like I said, we enjoy this for book club. We had a lot to talk about, so this would be a great book club pick, maybe if you're looking for something for November.
Love it.
And those are our recommendations for the week. If you have questions, suggestions, or comments, reach out on social media at Books and Bingos or email us at booksandbingos@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and join us again next week when we'll be recommending nonfiction titles for November. Happy reading!